Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga has said there were no handshake talks between him and President William Ruto in their 3 meetings last week. Odinga yesterday described his meeting with President Ruto at 3 different events as chance meetings that had nothing to do with the political situation in the country.
Recall that Raila Odinga had entered into a post-election agreement with former President Uhuru Kenyatta, popularly known as the Handshake, and has been under constant attacks by the Kenya Kwanza administration that the anti-government demonstrations by the former Prime Minister were a plan to get back to such kind of an agreement with President Ruto. And let's bring in Duncan Osoro. He's a lawyer and political analyst. He joins us from Mombasa, Kenya. Good morning, Mr. Osoro. Thanks for joining us. Mr. Osoro, can you hear us? All right. I think, we, of course, will try to get that conversation going when we connect with Duncan Osoro. But, interesting to see denial from Raila Odinga that, this has nothing to do with, just like the handshake he had with Uhuru Kenyatta. And, I always said that that's seemingly the role that he has always played in Kenyan politics.
Right.
When you don't win the election, you then become
the strongest voice of opposition.
Exactly. And then find a way to have some agreement with the government in power that, keeps you calm. And you can see that eventually not Raila Odinga now, Uhuru Kenyatta, wanted him, to take over power, from him after his tenure ended, but that didn't go so well. So everyone, I'm sure, expected that would be the same thing he would want from the Ruto government. Maybe it's just not going as planned.
Right. One thing that a number of people would have expected or hoped for would be that President William Ruto and Raila Odinga would find middle ground so that there can actually be time for governance, because it just seems that what's happening right now is that William Ruto has been putting out a lot of fires and hasn't had time to actually face the role of governance. On the one hand, there's a complaint about how the cost of living has increased, the price of hunger and things, expectations that the people of Kenya had when it seemed to them that William Ruto, for a number of them, things were already tough, and it seemed like they were expecting a savior to come and turn things around. Yeah. But, here's hoping that we don't have a situation where they return to the streets with the protests, seeing as there is no middle ground yet being found. We have Duncan Osoro, who's a lawyer and political analyst, joining us live from Mombasa, Kenya. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Duncan,
good morning, Africa.
Good morning. All right, we'd like to find out what your thoughts are. President William Ruto and Raila Odinga, the meetings have been referred to as chance meetings and saying that there's no handshake going on. Is this something how do the people of Kenya feel about it, and what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, after the 2022 elections, presidential elections, William Ruto emerged victorious as per the reports of our electoral body, that's at the IEBC. But then there were allegations of poll interference or electoral malpractices, whereby now the Azimio, led by Raila Odinga, said that the IEBC was or favored the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, led by the Excellence William Ruto. There were demands of opening the servers. That was the first one. And then remember, by the time the IEBC was announcing the results, there was a division within the commission, whereby the chairman and 3 others were on the one side saying the elections were proper and legal, and there were 4 other commissioners who said there is something wrong going on within the commission. These are the 4 that now the Azimio was fighting for, that they should be reinstated, because some of them resigned and one was sacked. Later, now Azimio came in with other demands, saying you promised while you were campaigning on a platform of lowering the cost of living. You campaigned on a platform known as bottom up, whereby you give the common, we call them mwananchi, the common man on the street, first priority in delivering your services. You are not doing it. And others said we should have a review on how IBC works, which restructure the IBC. And then now they say, we are going to the streets if you are not giving in to our demands. Some of the demands of which I have heard you mention is the cost of living. The cost of living, they're saying affording food stuff in Kenya, like electricity. Electricity is one part, and then we have like cooking flour. It has gone high. They are saying now you have to lower the cost of living. That's food. Then now we have to do an audit of the IBC servers. They are saying the servers were interfered with to show results that were not on the ground. They are saying voters voted for Azimio, but there was interference with the servers in that now the figures of Kenya Kwanza were exaggerated.
Yeah, well, Mr. Soro, so I think we have like a background on post-election chaos with the Kenyan government, but what we're trying to find out now is what role is
yes, sir. I was heading there now.
Yeah.
Then after Azimio going to the streets, there was mass destruction of property. Some people were injured. The media was beaten up. Some people died. Recently, I know you heard there was an invasion of property whereby one property associated with the former president, it's called the Northland City, was invaded and animals and livestock stolen. Now then, the president came out as a voice of reason and said, now that we are the government, we should be accountable. Let the opposition take it is the responsibility of holding us accountable to the Kenyans. And then now he said, let us stop. Then he proposed, let us have a bipartisan kind of negotiation. Then he said, we are forming our team, you form your team, take these people to parliament so that we reach a middle ground, of which it has never happened. We don't have a structure of these talks. And then now, as the Mio said, all feared going to parliament because the leading party, Kenya Kwanza, has a majority. And if it goes to parliament, it will be subjected to voting, of which now Azimio will have their way. No, sorry. Kenya Kwanza will have their way. We have three modes of engagement, or whatever was proposed by the president. That's negotiation, mediation, or arbitration. What the president proposed was a kind of negotiation whereby let us sit, let us talk. They formed a 7-member team, Azimio formed a 7-member team, but the problem is we do not have a structure, we do not have a working document how these negotiations are going to work. It is a replica of what happened post 2008 elections, where there was a mass destruction, people were dying, and there was a threat of maybe a revolution. That's the major problem we have right now. But now, Nani is saying, Azimio is saying, that if you do not meet our demands, we are going back to the streets under the freedom of association, demonstration.
So, Mr. Osoro, do you foresee, in the interest of time, do you foresee that people might actually have to go back to the streets? Do you foresee that this is just not mere talks and that Raila Odinga will lead people back into the streets?
My point, I say that this is just individual political interest. And if these talks fail, for sure, people will go to the streets. Remember, Raila Odinga has a major mass following in Kenya. So even we cannot rule people going out the streets again. We cannot rule it out. There might be people going back to the streets if the state or the current status remain as it is.
All right. Now, I also want to ask about, more about Raila Odinga, but of course, William Ruto is president. You mentioned, the economic crisis and the cost of living, skyrocketing in Kenya. Did all of this happen post-elections, or were they always, high, even before William Ruto?
Before William Ruto came in, the cost of living was still high. We have to face the facts as they are. The only problem now is there is another imposition of taxes which were not there or which had been reduced. VAT on petroleum products had been reduced to 8%. Now is a proposal to take it back to 16%. Salaried employees now are being taxed an extra 3% on their salaries, which now they have termed as housing levy. They are running away from calling it a tax and saying it is like a saving for the provision of affordable housing. But now that one now has gone into again to the ASMIO agenda, in that now they are saying, why tax extra when we have a lot of taxes? There was what we call the National Hospital Insurance Fund. Again, it has been increased. We have the National Social, and we call it the NSSF. It has been increased. So people are decrying the increment of taxes while the dollar is greatly affecting the shilling. There were taxes before Ruto. The only problem now, there is another imposition of the extra taxes going against his campaign slogan of bottom up, whereby he had promised to reduce the cost of living and make it better. Yes.
So it would seem that there are a number of concerns, people wanting him to meet up to the promises that have been made. And we are hoping that in the nearest future, we don't know when that will be, that these promises will be met and that there can be some middle ground between Raila Odinga and William Ruto so as to prioritize the people of Kenya. Thank you so much, Mr. Osoro, for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, and have a good day.